it was supposed to be funded by the youth. You pay into the system, blah, blah, blah. Inflation is a factor. I know there are things that they can do to account for inflation, but that's still... But what happens when your population is in decline? You can't support the elderly as much. And then they never thought about technological...
Yeah, life expectancy jumping 20 years.
That, yeah. And then...
And just less workers.
And then
yeah.
AI and robots taking the job. So not only is there not a big population, people are living longer, but there won't be as many people in the workforce.
Yeah.
And so that is taken from income. It's an income tax. It sounded great at first, and it worked for a while, but it's one of the biggest expenditures for this government, and they have to. It's a fight. You know, the Democrats always freak out and say, "Well, the Republicans want to cut back on your Social Security," and they're like, "But dude, have you seen the numbers? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
There's no way we can possibly do it." Well, there may be a way to keep it. I don't like it, but there may be a way to keep it. But you got to do realistic, not necessarily. Maybe it should cut back some, but you got to forego the AI stuff. I guess, to just say, dude, we need real people there. I know it's not going to be as great because the AI could do it better, but we got to keep this country afloat. I'd certainly, like, people got to have jobs.
Well, not to mention, look, we're not the only people that are having problems with this. In fact, we're one of the countries that are better off. I mean, you have so many countries that have that bell curve, right, on population growth that's pretty scary. You know, they're not replacing themselves at all, and China specifically, right? China's a huge concern. But Germany, tons of European countries, right, are having the same issue. So you're going to have the global market get hit all at one time. Already, I mean, in the energy industry and industrial industries, these people are worried about finding workers to keep these doors open, right? To replace people that are already there, and they can't find them. And no one knows where these workers are at all.
Where's everybody gone? Since this pandemic, where is everybody?
Well, the old people finally said, "Fuck this shit, I'm out." They were like, "Nah, I'm not doing this no
Early
more."
retirements, but then
They
it's
invested
like the rapture
heavily.
happened.
Yeah.
They
I always
invested-
talked about that.
All the old people invested heavily in Bitcoin, and now they're done.
You know, yeah. No, like you say, early retirements, but I mean, it's anecdotal, but I've gone to fast food restaurants here lately, and I see people in their 70s working, in lines in fast food restaurants. And, to go back to entitlement programs, right? Once you cut those out, there are a lot of people that depend on this
Yes.
to survive. And the families, which would traditionally be the role of families in the churches that would take care of these people, they can't afford it. They can barely afford houses now.
Right.
So what do? You're kind of stuck. We have to figure out how to get out of that.
My dad jumped in the chat. He said they also use Social Security's money for other things besides Social Security. So they're, yeah. So Sean, what age did you get your first job?
Oh shit! I got my first part-time when I was 14.
Travis,
16.
I was 16.
Yeah. Well, y'all had legal
My,
part-times.
my niece.
Mine paid me cash.
Oh no! I was
y'all
probably
had cash
working at
too?
12
I was
under
going
the
to say,
table
okay,
for
well, yeah,
cash.
let's back that up. Then.
Okay.
Yeah,
Whoa. I'm not gonna name the company so they don't get in trouble. But it was a good job.
So my niece, the family just had this discussion earlier. They're like, man, it's getting way too expensive. We're paying room and board. She's going to LSU now. It's like pre-law or something, I think, whatever. So you really want a good start for her. She's never worked a day in her life, not even under the table or anything. And she's over there at college, and they're like, you're going to have to start paying your way, or you're going to have to come back to UL, because this is getting expensive. And
Yeah.
she ain't going to work, boss. She ain't going. That's
is-
why you see the 72-year-olds flipping hamburgers in the back, because the kids just ain't having it.
Yeah, that was a great culture shift. not a great. I don't mean a great as in a good, but a great as in
Large.
a huge
Yeah.
culture shift.
We were talking about this the other day, weren't we? I mean, who was it I was speaking to about having roommates? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I shared a 2-bedroom apartment
Yes.
with 5 people for a long time, but that's what we wanted to get out. We wanted to have our own place.
Couldn't
and
wait.
Yeah,
everybody working, barely afforded it
Yeah.
because we were really stupid with money, but
I know.
we had our own spot.
And a good conversation or an anecdote to go with that was a friend of mine who lived with his parents until he was 25. He said for a long time he had a hard time finding a job. His parents were like, fine, just live here. He had a horrible time just managing, like mentally at some point. And then finally he found his job at like 24, 25. Now he's doing great. But again, anecdotal, obviously. But it's like he had never worked until it was time for him to work and like to choose something. To go to school. He didn't want to go to school. I completely understand that. But then he couldn't find like a good full-time job at the time.
You got to learn trades, and they make you take that stupid test in high school that's supposed to place you for what your career could possibly be, and all of that. But the rail industry never comes in that at all, right? That's I'm just trying to make that circular back into the rail industry. No kid ever grows up saying I want to be a conductor. I mean, this isn't the 1700s anymore. Or whatever,
No, those kids do exist, but they don't start running train until
they don't start running train until college.
no, they don't start actually running trains until they're 75 and they're doing it in their basement with the little models, right? That's when they're like, I'm finally living out my conductor life. And because they never saw it. They ended up becoming businessmen and working middle management, and they never thought like, hey, maybe I could just go work on a fucking train.
To your point,
What's wrong with that?
Exposure, right? How are you ever exposed to these things? In fact, what's his name? Larry Sharp, was it, that ran for governor in New York?
New York, yeah.
Yeah, Larry Sharp had a fantastic idea for this because civil service in New York, right? Well, not just civil service, but all of your trades, plumbers. The average age of a plumber in New York was somewhere around 56 years old, I believe. They weren't replacing themselves.
Wow.
Yeah. So what he was saying was the last 2 years of high school, right, are where you start getting prepared to go into college. So, well, what if we scratch that? And since that's part of public education already, let's say that costs $20,000. Why don't we cut a $20,000 check to these students, and they can either choose to go for the last 2 years of high school, or they can go to a trade school. And he said, watch overnight how many trade schools pop up with $20,000 a year, tuition. But, it would bring awareness, and it would give people an option, because college isn't for everyone.
No.
And look at the
Not at all.
competition. I mean, you see stacks and stacks of resumes with people that have college education that are competing against each other. I mean, petroleum engineers in South Louisiana.
Yeah.
Well, that was a huge boom in petroleum engineers back in the mid 2000s, right? Where it was just like everybody's going to school for that's
My
where you make
partner.
your money.
Yeah.
You got to go, you got to do it that way. But that's the culture at the time, right? The 2000s, 2008 and above, it's I don't mean to get like super philosophical and like weird about it or abstract about it, but it was this idea that like you just be whatever you want to be. You can be whatever you want to be. But nobody was thinking, well, yeah, I just want to be a welder. They're thinking like, well, I want to be rich, or I want to be
Right.
But
I mean, but it's going to be a kid who comes from nothing, right?
Yeah.
And welding is just that's it. That's their passion. But the average kid, no, they don't think about it. But then again, man, welders can make good money. Now you might have to go
Absolutely.
underwater.
Yeah,
and,
but you have to
but-
sweat, John, and,
and
nobody wants
You
to.
have to have talent too.
Yeah.
Not just anyone can weld.
Yeah, that's for
Welding is
sure.
hard, and the good jobs
It is an
require
art.
really talented welders.
It's very artsy.
Dude,
It is.
we had shop class, of course, in high school, and it takes me back to those days talking about it. Man, people would be welding, and the buttheads, who were some of my real good friends, would take some welding gloves while everybody else was welding in the booths in the back, fill them up with water, and then they would toss the water over the people while they were welding. I mean, you got electricity there. Like, it is super. Nobody died, thankfully. Nobody even got injured, but they were throwing water in the booths while people were welding. I don't know. That story just came up to me, and like, that's what high school is like. Sean, you didn't experience that, and
Nope. I was
probably a good thing because
Yep.
that's public school. That's public schools, man.
I lived my best life.
You want to know something crazy? Is that we were talking? Courtney and I were talking about this the other day. I was in 6th grade. In my PE class, we could take an optional hunter's education. We went skeet shooting
Nice.
for school.
Nice.
So you got all these kids with shotguns shooting skeets. Imagine that today.
Oh, there's no way. No way they'd ever
It's
let
insane.
that happen. But I mean, we take off for squirrel season, so the opening of squirrel season. That was
Yo,
the
fuck.
thing.
That's true.
Y'all country ass.
Now it's a teacher's
Best Fridays
in-service is what they call it.
Right.
But it was hey, it's opening day for
jeez
squirrel season. Nobody would
Louise.
show up.
No.
Wow. That's
Couple
incredible.
of the girls would show. Half the girls were in the woods.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You know?